Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. As you know, Jim Garrity is away. With us today, once again, Andrew C. McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He's now a contributing editor at National Review Online and a Fox News contributor. And Andy, we talked about the special counsel Robert Hur yesterday and how his opening statement put the lie to Joe Biden, claiming last month that the special counsel was asking him when his son died, but it was actually Biden that raised the issue. Now we have the benefit of hindsight with yesterday's testimony. So we're going to look at three clips, two of them Democrats going after Hur, and then one Republican trying to sift through Hur's logic in not actually charging Biden. So let's get to the Democrats first. We talked about Adam Schiff yesterday, trying to dumb down intelligence briefings for Trump as the GOP nominee. Did not distinguish himself any better yesterday. So here's part of the exchange between Schiff and Hur, and Schiff alleging that Hur made the report political by referring to Biden's memory when there were no charges involved.
I need to address something that you said in your prior question. What you are suggesting is that I needed to provide a different version of my report that would be fit for public release. That is nowhere in the rules. I was to prepare a confidential report that was comprehensive and thorough of an explanation.
What is in the rules, Mr. Hur, what is in the rules is you don't gratuitously do things to prejudice the subject of an investigation when you're declining to prosecute. You don't gratuitously add language that you know will be useful in a political campaign. You were not born yesterday. You understood exactly what you were doing. It was a choice. You certainly didn't have to include that language. You could have said vis-a-vis the documents that were found at the university, the president did not recall. There is nothing more common. You know this, I know this. There is nothing more common with a witness of any age when asked about events that are years old to say, I do not recall. Indeed, they're instructed by their attorney to do that if they have any question about it. You understood that. You made a choice. That was a political choice. It was the wrong choice. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona. Did special counsel wish to respond to that final question?
Yes, Congressman, what you are suggesting is that I shape, sanitize, omit portions of my reasoning and explanation to the Attorney General for political reasons.
No, I suggest that you not shape your report for political reasons, which is what you did.
That did not happen, Congressman. That did not happen.
And not to be outdone, you've got far-left Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal from Washington State claiming that this report took a lot of money and a lot of time and it ended in complete exoneration for President Biden, which Hur says was not the case.
So this lengthy, expensive, and independent investigation resulted in a complete exoneration of President Joe Biden. For every document you discussed in your report, you found insufficient evidence that the president violated any laws about possession or retention of classified materials. The primary law that you analyzed for potential prosecution was part of the Espionage Act, 18 U.S.C. 793E, which criminalizes willful retention or disclosure of national defense information. Is that correct?
Congresswoman, that is one statute that we analyzed. I need to go back and make sure that I take note of the word that you used, exoneration. That is not a word that
I'm going to continue with my questions.
I'm going to continue
with my questions. I know that the term
I ultimately reached
I know that
whether
the term
sufficient evidence existed such that the likely outcome
you exonerated
would be a conviction.
I know that
the
term willful retention has a Mr. Hur, it's my time.
Oh, that's got shades of Kamala. I'm speaking, Andy. I'm speaking. A couple different arguments here from the Dems. One that was overly political and one that it was complete exoneration, which don't really jive with one another. And Hur, I think, did a pretty effective job at beating back both of those.
Yeah, he was very effective as far as that went. The thing from Schiff is particularly dishonest because Schiff himself was a prosecutor and he knows that Hur's recitation of the special counsel rules is absolutely correct. This is supposed to be a confidential report that the line prosecutor, who in this case is the special counsel, provides to the attorney general. And it's the attorney general who decides to make it public, not Hur. Hur doesn't have any control over that. So this is basically the prosecutor who worked the case explaining to his supervisor why he doesn't think they should bring charges. And it has to be a very frank exchange with an eye toward what would this look like in a jury trial? Once you have checked all the boxes that say the guy committed all of the acts that you would need to commit in order to violate a criminal statute, and what you're down to is whether you can prove intent, criminal intent, beyond a reasonable doubt, those are cases that commonly go to trial. You have to give a stark description to your supervisor of how this looks in a jury trial. And that's exactly what Hur did. And it's probably exactly what Adam Schiff did when he was a prosecutor, if he was trying to exercise his discretion against charges, which prosecutors have to do all the time. And the other thing I thought, Greg, that was particularly dishonest about what Schiff said is that it's very common when you ask people about events years ago that they're simply not able to remember, and they say, I can't recall, and their lawyers tell them to say, I can't recall. Well, go read the transcript. The problem here is Biden didn't say, I can't recall. He recalled. He just recalled wrong. You know, when he recited events, like, for example, he says 2017, 2018, my son is deployed or he's dying at that point. With due respect to Biden, Beau Biden was deployed in 2009. He died in 2015. So it's like completely removed from the time frame that Biden was addressing. That's not saying I can't recall. That's indicating that at this point in time, Biden is incapable. He may be able to perceive. We always talk in legal terms about a witness's ability to perceive, recall, and relate. So in other words, you have to understand what you're seeing in real time in order to have competent information that you can testify to at a trial. You have to be able to recall it accurately, because when you're in the witness stand, it's often years after the event that you're testifying about, and you have to be able to relate it accurately. So it's perception, recollection, and ability to relate. Biden fails. I mean, presumably he perceived these events. The things that he said did in fact occur, but he was unable in reciting them to distinguish when they happened, to fit them in a linear timeline in time and space. That's not saying I can't recall. That's winging it and getting it wrong, which is very, very different. And I think what Hur's point is that if it looked like Biden was intentionally lying about things, the jury would have one understanding of it. But if it looked like he was trying to give his best recollection and it turned out he was like 180 degrees wrong on stuff, the jury would be sympathetic to an elderly man unable to recite events as they happen, given their relevance at the time and in a linear way. That's the kind of thing you have to explain to your boss when your boss wants to know, why aren't we charging this case if he's done everything that you need to do to violate the law? And Schiff knows that better than anyone because he did this for a living. As far as Jayapal is concerned, a prosecutor's job is not to exonerate the defendant or the suspect. The prosecutor's job is to prove criminal violations which have what we call essential elements. That is, every criminal offense in federal law, we don't have any criminal common law. Every offense in criminal law in the federal system is by statute. In other words, it's a statute that Congress enacts that's a criminal law that goes in the penal code. Every single penal crime has what we call essential elements. So, for example, if it's bank robbery, you have to prove that it was a financial institution, that somebody took money without authorization and did it intentionally. Those are basically the three essential elements of bank robbery. If it's armed bank robbery, there's a fourth element. There has to be a gun involved in the transaction. So when you hear all the time that prosecutors have to prove crimes beyond a reasonable doubt, what that means, where the rubber hits the road, is every statute has these essential elements, and those are the things that have to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. And in this instance, we have these classified information offenses where you're essentially finding that Biden acted willfully. He retained these documents. He kept them in an illegal place. He disclosed them to people who didn't have authorization. He hits all of the elements of the offense. When you hit all the elements of the offense, that's those cases usually go to trial. But the point is, with respect to what Jayapal was saying, the prosecutor who decides not to bring the case is not exonerating the defendant, at least most of the time. Sometimes you elect not to charge someone because you figured out that somebody else did it. The more common situation is you think you can prove everything, but you're not sure you can persuade the jury with respect to intent. And in those cases, it doesn't mean the crime didn't happen. It doesn't mean the person didn't do it. It means that you are worried that you may not have enough evidence to convince the jury, especially on intent. And in those cases, Greg, sometimes the decision you would make if your jury is in Washington, D.C., is very different than you would make if your jury was in, say, Biloxi, Mississippi, or San Francisco, or Denver. Jury pools are different, and they react differently to different kinds of cases. So all that goes into the mix. It's not exoneration.
You've said it better than anyone on the Republican side of the dais said, but just to hear it crystallized here.
There's a high bar.
Here's North Dakota Congressman Kelly Armstrong in a couple different clips here, walking through what you just said and her agreeing with him.
Mr. Herr, classified documents were found at the Penn Biden Center?
That's correct.
They were found in President Biden's garage?
In Wilmington, Delaware, yes.
And in his basement den?
Also in the same home, yes.
And his main floor office?
Correct.
And his third floor den?
Correct.
At the University of Delaware?
Correct.
And at the Biden Institute?
Correct.
And there are at least two different quotes, right, where he told his ghostwriter, and this is in your report, in a matter of fact, and this is February 16, 2017, that he had just found all this classified stuff downstairs.
He did make that statement that was captured on an audio recording.
And on April 10th, 2017, Biden read aloud a classified passage related to a 2015 meeting in the Situation Room.
That is in the report, yes.
And these are national security documents. Afghanistan, has been mentioned, a whole bunch of those things, right?
Correct.
So there you go, Andy. He basically ticks off all the boxes you need to tick off to file charges unless there's extenuating circumstances. So once again, puts the lie to Schiff, because without the concern about faulty memory, there's really no reason not to proceed, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think that line of questioning, I thought, also highlighted the weakness of Herr's argument. I think what Herr did, and I say this, I should preface this by saying I think he was a very effective witness. I think he's a straight shooter, and I believe he came to his conclusion honestly. I simply disagree with it. But juries are typically told that they should look at pieces of evidence not in isolation, but in conjunction. So you look at the whole mosaic of behavior. And here we're talking about something that went on for 40 years, right? So I think when Herr decided, I think he was gun shy about trying this case. When he said the jury could have rejected this piece of evidence because of X, and they could have rejected this piece, or they could have thought there was an innocent explanation for this one. He was doing what a defense lawyer typically does, which is take each individual piece of evidence and come up with a rationale why the jury might not be persuaded by it. But the question for a prosecutor always is the totality of the evidence. It's almost always possible to take one or two or three things and say, well, that might not do it, and that might not do it. But when you start to consider 3, 5, 7, 10, 40 years worth of things together as a mosaic, it becomes harder and harder to acquit somebody because of one thing that you can come up with a reason that there may be an innocent explanation for it. So I think he looked at this the way a defense lawyer often tries to dismantle cases. And I have to say, the reason that the Justice Department at trial has an over 90% conviction rate is because those arguments simply aren't that effective. And it's not that defense lawyers are not good. There are some defense lawyers that are just excellent. The thing is, I felt after 20 years of trying cases, that the talent of lawyers helps at the margins of cases, but by and large, people are convicted or acquitted because of the evidence.
Terrific breakdown, Andy. I always learn so much from listening to you in these situations. And now here's some more good news. Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the United States with more than 10,000 different kinds of plants and more than 2 million happy customers right here in the U.S. You can grow lemon, avocado, olive, or fig trees inside your own home on top of the wide variety of houseplants available. Plus, Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to order online, and your plants are shipped directly to your door in just 1 to 2 days. And along with their 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee, they offer free plant consultation forever. We have plenty of fast-growing trees right here in our own home, and we also have it on good authority that in the rare instance where a plant doesn't show up in the condition that it should, the Alive and Thrive guarantee is legit. And right now they have the best deals online, up to half off on select plants, and listeners to this show get an additional 15% off their first purchase when using the code Martini at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code Martini at checkout. fastgrowingtrees.com code Martini. Offer is valid for a limited time, and tell them that we sent you. All right, Andy, on to our bad martini now. And the Republican majority in the House of Representatives just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, but they still have the majority for the moment. It was, I think, 221, maybe 222, when they had a very tough time electing Kevin McCarthy Speaker. And then it was even tighter when they forced McCarthy out, or at least a handful of Republicans, and all the Democrats did. And it took a while to get Mike Johnson elected as Speaker. But since then, Kevin McCarthy has resigned. George Santos has been expelled, and a Democrat won the special election there. In Ohio 6, Bill Johnson, a Republican, left to become president of Youngstown State. Brian Higgins, a moderate at best congressman from upstate New York, has resigned. And now Ken Buck, who's just an odyssey in and of himself, has announced he is leaving in a few days. He represents the 4th District in Colorado. At one time, he was the Tea Party U.S. Senate nominee back in the Tea Party wave of 2010. Did not win that race. Then he came back as a House member. But in the last couple of years, he's pretty much bucked the Republican leadership, did not vote for the impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, for example, and has been a no vote on a couple of other things where Republicans have had a hard time getting stuff over the finish line. But he had initially said he wasn't running for re-election. Now he is not going to finish his term. Some say it's an effort to derail Lauren Boebert, who decided to run in his seat after he announced he wasn't running for re-election. But apparently there are some rules about not running in other districts while you hold a seat in a different district. So apparently in a special election, she really wouldn't be able to be part of it, which would handicap her in running for the full seat in November. All of that to say that once Buck is gone, it's 218 to 213, with then 4 open seats, most of which would lean towards Republicans. But the cryptic situation here is that Ken Buck doesn't think he's the last one to leave in this manner. At the end of this Axios piece, said, asked whether he's facing heat from his colleagues, Buck told Axios, I think it's the next 3 people that leave that they're going to be worried about. So, Andy, this is not a good situation for House Republicans. Just being able to hang on to the majority, I guess, would count as a win at this point. It's certainly not positioning themselves well to keep the majority later this year, especially when you factor in all these states that are trying to redistrict and change maps that had been more favorable to Republicans. So what do you make of where we stand now?
Yesterday, because I was on the Fox coverage of the hearing, and therefore I had to watch it so you wouldn't have to, I watched as Matt Gaetz was questioning her, and Gaetz happened to be sitting next to Ken Buck. And the look that I detected from Buck looking at Gaetz as he did his performance, and I actually thought Gaetz was fairly effective yesterday. I'm not a Gaetz fan, but I thought he, for the points he was trying to make, he was very effective. But the look of disdain on Buck's face was manifest. And I actually texted a friend of mine, take a look at this clip. You got to see the look that Buck is giving Gaetz as Gaetz is doing his performance. And then it was an hour later that it was announced that Buck was leaving. And I just think Buck is a good guy. I don't agree with him on the Mayorkas thing, but he had a principled position on it. He was wrong in part. I mean, he thought that, the Republicans hadn't proved that Mayorkas had committed a crime, which is not the standard for impeachment because it doesn't require a penal crime. But he was right in the sense, and, I would say the same thing about a couple of other people on the Republican side who took this position. The idea behind impeachment was supposed to be the president's not supposed to be able to hide behind his subordinates. And Mayorkas is just carrying out Biden's policy. So to the extent that what Buck is saying is, if you're going to impeach somebody for this, Biden's your guy. And why do we have an impeachment inquiry on Biden when the biggest catastrophe is the border? And yet that's not what the impeachment inquiry is about. I think there are good questions you could ask about that. But the bottom line here, and I feel this myself, so I understand what a lot of these guys are going through. The Republican Party that a lot of us were drawn to because it was the conservative party in America is now the Trump Party. And it's a very different policy menu. It just is. There's some commonalities of it, but I wouldn't call Trump a conservative. And I think he's very transactional, and his movement is transactional. And there's a lot of people who are uncomfortable with not only the performance art that we see up there and how dysfunctional Congress has become, but simply the fact that if it was the Trump party as opposed to the Reagan Republican, party with roots in, Barry Goldwater and Bill Buckley and Milton Friedman, this is not what you signed up for. If what rings your bells is that Republican Party, this Republican Party may not be for you. I know it's not for me, even if I agree with it, maybe half the time. There's a lot of people who just simply don't like the way this functions or doesn't function. And then there's a lot of people who are like, this is not the party that I signed up for. And you're going to see more and more people step away from it. And it's just going to be, the deck's going to be reshuffled. It's just a fact.
The people that like to rock the boat definitely make the most noise. In other words, Kevin McCarthy got fired because 8 Republicans went along with all the Democrats who were just looking to create chaos too. And so you've got your Gates, I think Nancy Mace was part of that. I mean, she's never met a TV camera she doesn't love. So the question is whether they're just the loudest or whether they're becoming a bigger and bigger faction. The other thing I would say is it's not like this is a new shift in the last year and a half in the Republican Party. And so if you put your name on the ballot in November of 2022, unless you're dying or there's an emergency in your family or you're caught in a scandal or something like that, finish the term at least. If you don't want to run for another term, that's one thing. But some of these people who get elected and then 4 months later, I got offered this job. And so see you later. I don't care if the seat's vacant for 4 months. Finish the job. You signed up for it. Fulfill your commitment to the people in your district.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I think you and I would cling to it in a futile way because you have people who get elected who all the time just use it as a stepping stone to the next thing. I mean, like, for example, I like DeSantis a lot. Does anyone think that being governor of Florida was his main priority while he was running for president? Of course not. To me, he's one of the good guys. So, a lot of these guys use the position as the stepping stone to the next thing. And that causes, I think, a general feeling that if you have something that comes up that's more important to you than your current seat, you feel perfectly comfortable walking away from it because that's what the culture is. That doesn't make it any less wrong. It's just, I think that's the way people calculate it.
All right, one more bit of good news, Andy, and that is the fantastic deals you can find at 4patriots.com/martini, including their signature offer right now, a free solar panel with the purchase of the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. And of course, free shipping on all orders over $97. You want to be prepared. You don't want to get caught unprepared when your power goes out. It's going to happen eventually. It's just a question of whether you're in the dark for a few minutes, a few hours, or maybe even a few days or more. The Patriot Power Generator 2000X, worth its weight in gold. It's now got double the capacity, and it'll keep your big appliances running, including your fridge, which is full of food that just keeps getting more and more expensive. It's got 12 outlets, including 4 AC, plus 2 USB-C outlets that can charge your phone 20 times faster than normal. So visit 4patriots.com/martini to get your Patriot Power Generator 2000X with the free solar panel included. Plus, get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini.
Where have all the Friday jobs reports gone? The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet. The White House used to gloat about their incredible job numbers. The latest report was off by 40%. They are lying to you. What's the real truth about the jobs reports? It's all fake. Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Andy, on to the crazy martini now. And boy, this is a doozy. Usually we just joke about the Jets, but today the Jets actually are part of the crazy martini. Of course, last year, Aaron Rodgers put up historic numbers as quarterback of the Jets with 0 yards and 0 touchdowns because, was it the fifth snap of the game? He snapped his Achilles tendon and was out for the rest of the season. But now, as he rehabs and seems very likely to be ready to go physically for the 2024 NFL season, he might be slightly distracted again because reports yesterday suggest he might be hitting the campaign trail at the same time he's trying to win games and the AFC East. Yahoo, the former MVP quarterback, is at the top of the list of potential running mates for third-party candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who confirmed his interest to the New York Times. The other name at the top of his list, former Minnesota governor and pro wrestler Jesse the Body Ventura. Apparently, they've been speaking continuously, quote unquote, over the past month. And even the domain name KennedyRogers.com apparently registered just as recently as last week. Obviously, they share an affinity over concerns about vaccines, particularly COVID vaccines. But Aaron Rodgers has made it very clear he's got some other issues that perhaps don't put him in the mainstream of society. So, Andy, I'm guessing if he was going to do this, you wished last year would have been 2024. He had a bunch of free time and he could have run then. Now, as the campaign heats up, maybe he's going to play on Sunday, Monday, hit the campaign trail Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm sure this isn't distressing to you as a Jets fan at all.
Yeah, well, I'm more worried about it as a Jets fan than I am as an American because, there's a better chance that Rodgers will make it to the 10th play of this season than that he'll ever be Vice President of the United States. Look, I think, seriously, as a Jet fan, I do get concerned about this because, being a quarterback in the NFL is a hard job, even if you're as great as Rodgers has historically been. I'm a Met fan, so I'm used to where we hire, people who made their name for other teams, and then we pay them as they cruise into the old age home, washed up.
Bobby Bonilla.
Shadow of their. Yes, but I think Bobby Bonilla Day is coming up. I think he's still on the payroll.
Oh, yeah.
So, being a quarterback in the NFL is hard, and you have to train for it, and you have to throw yourself into it completely. And I thought up until now that we'd get a really good year out of Rodgers next year because he's got a chip on his shoulder. There's all the angst over what happened last year, and I thought he'd come back ferocious. But if he's going to dally in this kind of stuff, you'd think that he's probably not got his eye on the ball of what his main job is, which is concerning. But on the other hand, as an American, I think anything that shows the campaign of RFK Jr., who was a crazy person, to be ridiculous is a good thing, and if he's going to run an anti-vax campaign with him and Rodgers, I guess the likelihood is that's going to draw more from Biden, which is probably why Democrats are more upset about it. I think Trump would like this, not that it would necessarily be helpful to him, except to the extent that it detracts from Biden. But Trump likes all this theater and all this, he doesn't like the politics part of politics he's not into, but like this kind of stuff is, it floats his boat. I think anything that shows the RFK Jr. thing is just a joke is helpful. But as a Jet fan, it's too bad.
If Kennedy Rodgers wins, do you prefer Quinnen Williams or Sauce Gardner for Secretary of Defense? Oh, God.
Well, I guess I go with Quinnen Williams, actually. He's a stalwart defender. Just relax, Greg, because when the RFK gambit fades away, we still got Trump and Biden, so we're in good shape.
And Aaron Rodgers has, 40 years to pick up the mantle here because, as we know, you only hit your presidential prime 15 years after you qualify for Social Security. So I do feel sorry for you Jet fans. Just when it looks like things are looking up, there goes an Achilles tendon, and the next thing you know, he's getting derailed by third-party politics.
Yeah, well, I get made fun of over this, but I didn't want Rodgers. I wanted Baker Mayfield. So I just want to be on record that was my position, and I'm sticking to it. It's like I felt the same way as I felt when the Mets signed Verlander, which is Cy Young not available? Like, isn't there some 80-year-old guy that we could?
Andy, always fun to be with you. We'll do it again a couple times next week. We'll see you then.
Like that, Greg. Thank you so much.
Andy McCarthy, he is a former Assistant Chief U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, also a contributing editor at National Review Online and a Fox News contributor, also the author of Ball of Collusion. In for Jim Garrity today, I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. If you don't already, tell some friends about us as well. Thank you in advance for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Visit all of us on X or Twitter. He's at Andrew C. McCarthy. Jim, of course, at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Wednesday and join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.